Hello, everybody. My name is Nana Nubi, and I'm here to welcome you all to the second virtual edition of UCD Festival at Home 2021. So, the UCD Festival is a unique and award winning one. It's one where the global community of UCD, both students, alumni, and future students, and also the wider general public, join us for free online events. For the second year in a row, we are not on campus, but instead we are bringing you all this inspiring, engaging, and very informative activities of the regular festival, but just from a digital platform. And it's this for our worldwide festival audience to enjoy. I am particularly thrilled to be involved in the series of UCD Festival at Home conversations. There are over 20 chats and discussions taking place over the 3 days, and with nearly 100 free virtual and engaging events also running across the weekend. There is something for everyone to enjoy. Now, stay up to date on the full UCD at Home program at ucd.ie/festival. That's ucd.ie/festival. And don't forget that you can join the conversation that we're going to have right now through the chat function on YouTube or on Twitter at hashtag UCD Festival. So do get involved. Again, this is a live event and we do welcome questions via the chat functions. We hope to get to as many questions as we possibly can later on in the conversation. Today I'm here with fantastic panelists who will be talking about being young, Black, and Irish. And the first fantastic speaker that we have is a UCD student herself. She's just finished, so she's on the way out. But it's Aghogho Okpara, who is a writer, a speaker, and a content creator. She's also a science student at UCD. And with her content, as she said herself, she aims to provoke people to think outside of their comfort zones and to confront unconscious biases that they may have but may not be aware of. Now, Aghogho will talk to us and will discuss what she would like to see for the future of young Black Irish people. In doing this, she will touch on a number of areas, but essentially, we hope that she will present what representation and acceptance could look like for the future of young Black Irish people. Now, pass it on to you, Aghogho.
Thank you very much, Nana. Hello, everybody. As I've been introduced, my name is Aghogho, and I am a writer. I particularly write on issues such as what we're speaking on today, such as being Black and Irish, for example. And I'm very passionate about it because I believe in the future. And I believe in the future for children, especially children of color and Black children who may not benefit if they are if they undergo the same systems that perhaps I have undergone or any of the other panelists here. So I'm very passionate about advocating for these things because I do believe that change can happen. And one reason why I'm excited about this conversation is because I genuinely think that talking about how things can progress is more beneficial than just speaking about our past experiences and leaving it there. Because as we've seen over the past year with the whole Black Lives Matter issue, people have been speaking and they have been talking, and yet things have not really changed significantly. So the only way I believe things can change significantly is if we look prospectively into what we can do and what this country can do as a whole to improve things. And in my opinion, the first thing that I think is important to speak on when it comes to overcoming the issues that we face as Black and Irish people is the educational system in Ireland. And I mean both primary, secondary, and tertiary education. And when I speak about education, I'm mainly speaking about how Black people and other people of color are represented in our current educational systems. And I don't currently believe, at least from my own experience, being educated in Ireland, I've been educated here since I was in junior infant. I don't believe that there's enough representation, and I think there's bad effects to that. For example, when it comes to learning about history, we learn about history under the label of it being world history, but what we're really learning about is European history. And if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with that, but you should call it European history. Don't call it world history, because when you do that, what you really are doing is you're telling certain people that, yes, you are part of the world, but you're not significant when we speak about the world as a whole. And that's why I think it's important that if we want to start cultivating a more multicultural nation, a more multicultural system and education, we need to incorporate what multiculturalism is about. And that's about including everybody in the story and telling things in their entirety rather than in part. So one reason I believe that we should speak about Black people and other people of color in history is because children absorb things, and they absorb things whether they are conscious of it or whether they're unconscious of it, especially young children. I'm sure there's a lot of psychological studies that show that what you take in when you're a child affects what you do later on in life and affects how you see yourself and how you see the world around you. And I believe that the reason why we don't see a lot of Black people abroad, like in Europe, for example, in America, in the highest positions of power, is because they're not taught that they are able to be in those places. They don't see people who look like them in those places. And the effect of that is they don't believe that they can get there. And that has a negative effect, not only on the children who don't see themselves, but also on the children who do see themselves. So for example, if I was a white child and all I ever see is white people being taught about as innovators and inventors of things and CEOs of companies and educators and politicians and this and that, I'm going to believe in myself and my ability to get there because I see somebody who looks like me in that position. However, because I only see somebody who looks like me, I'm going to subconsciously think that people who don't look like me are not able to be in those places. And hence, when I grow up and I'm in the future and I'm in my workplace, I'm not going to think of those people as being appropriate to hire, for example, because I've been subconsciously taught that these people are not as capable as I am, or people that look like me. And that's why I think representation is something that we should invest in, because it doesn't only affect who we think it affects everybody as a whole. Change doesn't come when we just say, let's change it just for these people. If one person is affected, everybody is affected. And I think we do need to invest in like changing the curriculum in primary schools and secondary schools. For example, in the secondary school curriculum, incorporating people of color who are poets, for example, in the English course. When you're talking about people who have invented things, include black people who have done things, speak about them, and don't say it in a way like, oh, okay, this is Black History Month, this is Black History Week, so we're going to talk about this. No, show it as a whole, in the entirety of it. So from the beginning to the end, so that it's not a thing of, oh, we're just appreciating you because you've complained, but no, you're actually the entire story of it. And I think it's really important. And there's a book that I would recommend everybody read. It's called The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, and he puts it really well. I'm just going to read off a quote that I have from him here. And he says, there would be no lynching if it did not start in the schoolroom. Why not exploit, enslave, or exterminate a class that everybody is taught to regard as inferior? And I think it still applies today, though we don't see lynching as often as it used to be in the past. The principle of what he's saying stands. Why not exploit and why not look down on, why not discriminate a race of people that everybody is taught, either consciously or subconsciously, to regard as inferior? So I believe that the change we want to see in society will begin when we start from the base level, and that starts from education. Now, another place that I think change can cause massive effects in future is diversity training. And we are seeing that often, particularly, well, not often, but we've seen it recently in the workplace because of the events that happened last year. And in the recent years before even last year, things have been happening. However, I don't think we should limit it to the workplace. When we're talking about training about diversity and inclusion, it's not just about training the older generation. And the reason why I think that is because the older generations are parents to the younger generation. And we tend to think that because we're young, we all think the same, but that's not true. we see time and time again that people behave like their parents. They think like their parents. So only focusing on the older generation and not focusing on the generation that is upcoming, it's a limited approach at doing things, and I don't believe it's effective either. I think what's important is that we educate everybody at the same time, whether you're 70 years old or whether you're 20 years old, because something I found from my experience at university is not everybody who's my age thinks the same way I do. I'm not saying that the way I think is perfect, but I mean in terms of discrimination, for example, because their parents taught them to look down on others, they think it's okay to do so as well. And that's why I think diversity and inclusion training should also come into universities, not just workplaces. As in, I know for me anyways, in my first year of UCD, during orientation week, we have trainings for different things. We have IT training, and we have like UCD does a lot of awareness weeks and things like that, where you learn about different things. There's workshops, all of this stuff. I think diversity and inclusion should be incorporated into that from the beginning of university, not just a thing where you're in a third year or fourth year module and you're learning about what racism has done to Irish society because you study social science, for example, but know that everybody starts on the same level. And I think that's how we're going to see the future, progress, and that's how we're going to see change. So yeah, I'm enthusiastic about what can happen, and yeah, thank you,
Thank you
Nana.
so much, Aghogho. Thank you so much, Aghogho. Yeah, definitely. Fantastic content there. I mean, you spoke brilliantly about how not just the issues, and you spoke about how this has come to the forefront in Ireland because of the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement last year. But here we hear you saying, how do we move forward? Representation is extremely important. Aghogho has spoken about how history being presented in its entirety, not just in parts, is extremely important. And I thought it was fantastic how you definitely encapsulated the fact that representation is important not just for the minority who isn't represented, for the Black Irish who isn't represented, but also for the white Irish. Because it's very brilliantly presented, and it's absolutely a truth. If you only see yourself, then perhaps you'll only believe that you're the only one capable, and that could ingrain this unconscious bias that we do see good people with good intents and good hearts having this inside of them because that's all they've seen. So yeah, so thank you so much. And I believe Philly Speaks is actually on the Leaving Cert. That's a Black Irish poet. So Ireland, we're moving there. We're moving forward. Ireland is. I'm very proud to be Black Irish because it's a country where we complain. We said, guys, there isn't enough, and we've seen Philly Speaks is on the Leaving Cert. And then also Yemi Adenuga, the first Black female government minister as well. She's a what interrupt me. Yemi Adenuga is a yeah, that's it. First Black Irish councillor, and that's also in CSP. So I'm excited for the future of Ireland because these presence of Black Irish people is being presented to the young generation. And I kind of encourage us to continue doing more so that there'll be more content. So thank you so much, Aghogho. That's a fantastic discussion on what it is to be Black Irish and what we would like the future to look like. Now I'm going to move on to JYellowL, who is possibly the coolest person in this conversation. JYellowL is a Black Irish musician who's got international reception. Like, you're literally famous. Your music gets millions of views and streams. So you're literally famous, and fantastic content as well in the music. So I mean, you're a UCD alumni yourself, and a Black Irish person, Nigerian and Jamaican background and ancestry. So I put it to you that having these multiple identities, what is it like navigating the Black Irish scene, particularly navigating the music scene, particularly as a Black Irish person with these multiple identities, and what do you want for the future, and what do you want for the young musicians who are Black Irish coming forward? What do you want to see in terms of how they're received in the music industry here and also in the world?
First of all, thank you for all your words. Very flattering. And thank you, Aghogho, for your insight there. I learned a lot from listening to that, actually, and it's going to help me make my points further, actually. But I think my experience is has been an uphill battle, but it's hard for me to discern been whether that's linked to me being black and Irish or that's just music in Ireland. You know what I mean? So um, I think overall my experience has been as an upcoming artist in Ireland has been very tricky. But one thing that I can say that I've faced uniquely and other people who look like me doing music have also faced is the argument of relatability. You know, when you talk about my identity and all these multiple countries that I've, cultural backgrounds, it's very tricky to come across as relatable to most of the population. And they much rather, they see themselves or resonate more with the experiences of other people who look like them than they would with myself. And whether that be at shows, with I don't know, colloquialism, I guess, language, the way people talk and stuff. But that's something that I've been told personally, and it was brought to my attention, but I definitely felt it before I knew what it was. And I don't know if I know, actually, no, I know it's contributed to part of my struggle to, you know, rise in music, but that is just what it is. But a point that I want to make actually, before I forget, because it's actually linked with Agrawal's point there, is that when you talk about conscious or unconscious bias, it starts from the education system and it goes deeper and spreads out into different fields, because even in the creative fields, like music, for instance, I'll speak specifically about music. There are times where I've I'm an artist, so I see myself as a harmonica. You know what I mean? The world around me blows into me, and I just make the sound. You know what I'm saying? I just get inspired by my surroundings. So there's times where I speak about certain issues that people would call controversial, or like, oh, that's not what people want to hear. That's not going to sell. What they want to hear actually is this. Especially if you're trying to appeal to this sort of audience, or a black audience, or da da da, you have to speak about what's trending, what's popular. Certain things are too political for you to talk about to get on radio or that kind of thing, and that's something that I've heard multiple times. But I think what that also stems from, this is where Snake Talk was from, where it stems from also is us seeing ourselves in a very linear way as well when it comes to music. I think like we have to represent these ideals because that's what it is to be a rapper. That's the kind of music people want to hear. You know, anything else doesn't sell. You know what I'm saying? And personally, that's something that I've been battling with my whole career. It's not an easy thing to overcome because on the one hand, this creative, on the other hand, this business as well, and you do have to weigh all these things up. But I think that's ludicrous because for me, saying Black Lives Matter isn't a political statement, or believing Black Lives Matter isn't a political statement. It should be common sense. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like being told that my music is overly political because I'm talking about injustices in the prison system or whatever, or injustices in how myself in just everyday experiences, or police brutality, or oppression, any form of oppression. Me talking about that shouldn't be political. It should just be, or shouldn't be seen as political, and that's something I've always thought was crazy. However, that's neither here nor there, I guess. But that's something that I faced, and I think that's where it comes from. Because also, what harmful effect of that could be, kids growing up and only seeing one view of themselves being represented in media will then or one view of themselves or these ideals being propagated, will then want to emulate what they're seeing and feel like that's what they are, and are marginalized by default just by what's shown in front of them constantly and reproduced. So that's definitely a very harmful effect. And thank you for sparking that point, Agogo, because That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's really deep. But another
Yeah.
thing that I want to say, just sorry, I'm really bad at monologues.
Go ahead. No, go
So
ahead. I mean, like, I
yeah,
have some questions for you as well if you want me to throw it.
oh sorry, I just want to
Yeah,
make
I mean,
this
like,
last point
so,
and then you can.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
yeah, what I'd like to see more as well is when we talk about representation in media as a whole, not just music. 'Cause I think first of all, music is generally an avenue where Black people are celebrated, or Black music is celebrated, Black culture is celebrated, right? I want people to be able to empathize beyond that music in future. You know, what I mean, empathize with the struggles and also empathize with the blissful parts of the culture as well, but not be selective with their support.
Yeah,
I would also like to see more representation in the media with Black people not just talking about racism. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think that's something that we've seen over the past year with the Black Lives Matter thing. A lot of Black people being invited on that would have never actually got the platform beforehand, but to discuss racism. What we need to do is invest in the creativity of Black people and trust them to create amazing content beyond that. You know what I mean? We're so much more than our struggles and our oppression. We're so much more than that. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, your question.
absolutely. No, I mean, like, you've given solid, fantastic points, and I mean, JYellowL to talk, being a Black Irish musician. I love the imagery you gave about you being in a harmonica. That's very beautiful. So I mean, yeah, I mean, like, I mean, your music is political, but for you, it's not political. It's common sense, and I think, yeah, you're definitely right in that the intellectual part of being a rapper is not embraced more, and that also affects the young Black people because they see if they're going to be a rapper, you have to always talk in this certain way. But you're breaking that
Mhm.
because you're presenting this other type of music within that genre where you're tackling serious issues. You're tackling real life issues and problems, and I think that's fantastic. And I mean, to be honest with you, you're thriving in that. So yes, you have faced issues, and there has been uphill battle, but thanks, because I think you're definitely winning that battles with millions of streams from your music,
Thanks so
and
much.
yet keep doing it because yeah, we ought not to stereotype ourselves in terms of only presenting this type of music because it sells, this type of content because it sells, including what you
Mhm.
said, the racism conversation. And I find myself also in those spaces where we're only talking about racism when we see Black faces, and which is why I really want
Mhm.
us to look at the future. I think you've given us fantastic tips on how to look at the future going forward. What do we do? Invest, and I would definitely would like loud that
Definitely.
invest in Black people, not just to talk about racism, but for so many other things that we are absolutely capable of. And yeah, I mean, Ireland, I think is doing we're doing a better job because we know we've got people like Tulumake as well. That's breaking records and making hits as well. Yeah, shout out to her. Yeah, so and yeah, so I do definitely hope that we do move forward and invest in our people beyond the music. And I say even us, like we ourselves, we're all professionals. Well, Aghogho, you're going to be professional soon. You just graduated, but so we also invest in our communities, so that we can strongly, authentically present things that we have beyond our struggles, as you said, which I think was fantastically put. And yeah, I mean, like I would now like hope to go down to our last panelist, who is Bashir Otukoya, assistant professor Bashir Otukoya, who's you've done fantastic research. You did your PhD and you looked at citizenship, you looked at being Irish, you looked at being a citizen of the European Union, and so you also consult and on these issues of race and acceptance and belonging and things like that. So I hope, again, this conversation, I definitely want us to be a future forward, going forward. How can we do better? How can we better? How can we accept that Black Irish voices are here? People are here to stay. So what we're hoping that you bring to this conversation is really give us tools how do we become comfortable about talking about race? Putting our hands up and saying, yes, I'm a white Irish person and I've said racist things in the past. I've had perceptions and perspective that are not right and, are oppressive. I see that. Now, Bashir, give us the tools to do better going forward. And I hope feel free to jump in there.
I'll certainly try my best. I'm not going to say I have all the answers, but based on my experience and my research expertise, I'll certainly do my best. And, I suppose the first tip I would say and actually encourage you to continue doing is to continue these conversations. And I'd like to thank, UCD for allowing these conversations. I think they're so important and, should really be a part of daily life, of social life. And it doesn't have to be about understanding what Black Irishness is. It just needs to be, as Aghogho and JYellowL has already said, it's just about representation. Just seeing a version of you, and the sense of belonging that spews from that is just, it's wonderful to see somebody who looks like you, performing a service which in the past you haven't been exposed to. And I think it's so important in the way Aghogho explained. And I suppose the first step is to continue engaging in these conversations. Is the only way that we can really develop change. If we don't address it, if we don't talk about it, then how can we move on? And so how do we get comfortable talking about it? And, truth be told, it's not easy. It's the most uncomfortable thing to talk about. People don't like the word racism. I was on Claiborne the other day and, I was talking about institutional racism and people don't like that term. We tiptoe around it. But why? And so that's kind of what I want to really talk about today, is trying to understand why we feel so uncomfortable and getting to the point that realizing that for many of us, and I mean many of us on the panel and those who we are speaking on behalf of, and I mean the ethnic minority groups and other marginalized voices in society, is that, that we need to be heard in the sense that we need to be able to speak about our difficulties, in a sense that we have had to, I suppose, as I'm doing right now, the reason it sounds like I stutter a lot, but really what I'm doing is trying to reflect on using the right words so as not to cause offense, because people don't like being called racist. People don't like being the terminology. So I have to find ways to, I suppose, appease everybody. And that's a difficult thing to do. And essentially, that is what we all need to be doing. It's just to be mindful about what we say and how that affects other people. And I'll give examples of that if I have time in a few minutes. But when we're talking about being comfortable with discussions, the reason why we're so uncomfortable right now is because what's happening is we are, I suppose, unraveling the understanding of Irish identity. Because so far, it hasn't been a question, you're either Irish or you're not. Now, all of a sudden, it's you're Black Irish or you're Asian Irish or you're Muslim Irish. And that's been an explosion which we are not used to in Irish society, only of the last 20 years. But actually, we have ethnic minority groups in terms of the travelers, for example, who've been in existence in Irish society for as long as, history is documented. And that is not to say that we haven't recognized difference, is that we know it's there. It's just that we're not able or we're not comfortable enough to discuss difference. And so because it's a identity complex, because it's an issue of identity, now we're, us Irish, we're innocent because we've been colonized, we've had to migrate to other countries, we've been oppressed. But yes, but we're also perpetrators. And for that, I have to take you back to history, because you have to remember that Ireland was also colonized. And our institutions that's been created 100 years ago, that has been transpired, under the Irish Republic, have resemblance of those institutions from the colonial history of Britain. And so it would be naive of us to say that there's no racism here, when those systems are based on systems of institutionalized racism, which these countries themselves are still dealing with. And they openly acknowledge that we have a problem with institutionalized racism, but we're going to do something about it. And these are countries with experience of racism, of difference in society. We're new to it. And so we need to learn the experiences of well-developed nations. And that experience is that we cannot neglect the fact that racism and, I suppose, difficulties or issues can arise with differences. And such one of those issues in the extreme end is that of racism. And we need to focus on that. And how do we focus on that? We need to talk about it. So how do we do that? Well, psychologists have some what's called cognitive dissonance. And I think the best example of that is you're driving on the road and somebody overtakes you, angrily, and you're like, oh, that guy's a bad driver. But then one day you're late for work, you're on the motorway, and you do the same thing to somebody else. And all of a sudden, in your mind, you're like, are you a bad driver? Because you've just done the same thing that you've accused somebody of being a bad driver. That's what we call cognitive dissonance. And so you have that complex where your beliefs don't match your own action. Mm-hmm. And so that also transpires to racism, where when somebody calls you, or discrimination generally, someone accuses you of being racist, or there is institutional racism in society. And all of a sudden, that seems like it's an attack on society. But it's not. It's not an attack. That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reflect on what people, well-experienced people in this area, are telling you is the problem. Problems which we are already aware of, but keep rejecting because we don't want to engage in these conversations. But the issue is that we have to, for the benefit of the younger generations who are growing up in the manner Aghogho and JYellowL have already explained. And so when we are accused of being racist or being an asshole or whatever it is, that really is an opportunity to take it back and like, whoa, yes, it's not an easy thing to do. It really takes a lot of strength. And I suppose from someone who have experienced racism throughout a lifetime, I suppose we've developed thick skin and we're able to deal with uncomfortable situations. And suppose what I'm trying to say is that we now, everybody in society, needs to be able to just reflect on that. And we will make mistakes in the sense that we will get defensive. We will say like, oh, what are you talking about? I'm not racist. But at the end of the day, you still need to go back and reflect on that. Why am I so angry? It's just a word at the end of the day. You're not going to get arrested. God knows we don't have hate crime laws yet. So there's no sanction. There's no punishment for being called racism. But it's good if you feel defensive. That's the first step. That's the first sign of a symptom, because racism is a disease, and it's been a disease for as long as we've lived. And so to cure that disease, and there's no ultimate cure, it's a step-by-step process. The first thing is to recognize the symptom. And the symptom is if somebody accuses you of racism, that's not an attack. It might be an attack on your character or your belief, that cognitive dissonance. And the way to address that is that, flight or fight response. Either, you reject it, no, I'm not racist, or you fight it. What do you mean I'm not racist? Or that's only in America, or no, it's not racism, it's bullying, blah, blah. Rather than doing that, what we really need to do is reflect, what do you mean by that? Because remember, we're all learning here, okay? Racism is although it's internationally well known and well documented, but despite all that, despite all the laws, it still exists. And so why aren't we at a position where we're no longer discussing about racism, and four young, well-adept individuals can talk about their careers and their potential? But all this conversation has been what it means to be Black and Irish, yet we've spent so much of our time discussing the issues we've had. And, it's such a difficult dilemma in the sense that, when the question is, what does it mean to be Black and Irish? It's, all this trauma you've experienced, and that's not what Black and Irish means. It should be a celebration, because this is the time where we are creating a new identity, in a sense, because the term Black Irish has never existed up until the last 10 years or so. And so the positive spin on this is that we are starting to create an identity, which goes back to what we need to really reflect on in terms of talking about what Irishness means in general. And I suppose I'll finish on this last point. And because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to refer you to the Constitution of Ireland, 1937, Article 3. I'm only going to read the first 4 lines because it says, "It is the firm will of the Irish nation, in harmony and friendship, to unite all the people who share the territory of the island of Ireland in all the diversity of their identities and their traditions." All their identities and tradition. It does not say a homogeneous Irish identity. And even if it did, identities are not, they're not stuck. They're not rigid. They're transient. They're fluid. And they should represent our Constitution, because our Constitution is also fluid and transient. because it represents society, which is also fluid and transient. And so if we want to affect the change that we are seeing in the ethnographic landscape of Ireland, we need to start having these uncomfortable conversations and just calling a spade when we see it, calling it out so that we can, once we talk about it, that's the first, I suppose, the first two, just being able to talk about it. There is no crime. You might cause offense. Just apologize, if you feel bad. And if you don't feel bad, go off and reflect on it. Have a chat, talk to open-minded people, not just your usual people who are also closed-minded. Open your minds a little, okay? And I suppose that's the biggest advice I can give to everybody. It's just to be comfortable talking about race, because because race and difference exist, and we cannot ignore it. Color exists, and so we need to identify it when we see it. And it's in identifying difference that we can start resolving the issues of the minority voices that are often neglected. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bashir. Fantastic contribution and brilliant points raised. Clearly Bashir is an academic lad, so with the big words, cognitive dissonance. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think you've given really good tools of moving forward. You're definitely right. We wanted this conversation to be Black Irishness, but we're still always talking about our struggle because the trauma is so deep and is so big. You can't ignore that wound until it heals. And so clearly our wounds aren't healed yet. And definitely look forward to the time. Hopefully my daughters will not have as deep a wound as we have had, and their Black Irishness will indeed be a celebration of their identity. And that's definitely what I hope for the future, and definitely I can see that's what you all hope for the future too. I mean, you talked about racism being a disease, kind of struck me there because I was like, oh, that's a deep way to describe it, but it is. It's luckily it's one that has a cure, as you said. Again, that's being educating oneself, having conversations with people that are outside of your normal circle and outside of your normal groups, because they may have the same ideologies and same mindset as you. So really, just going out of our way to engage in these discussions, if we do find out we're stepping on people's stepping on people's toes, or we're saying things that people are offended by, engaging in these conversations to explain why is it not cool for you to say the N-word when you're rapping to a song, or when you're singing the song, even though it's in the song. Just having these conversations are important, and I definitely agree that our white Irish colleagues and families should definitely be opening up and start getting comfortable with it, because the fact is we're not going anywhere. I mean, I'm from Nigeria and I love Nigeria, but this is my home now, and this is where my family is. This is where all our families are. So this is our home going forward. So we all have to just get on with it. And yeah, I mean, I love what you talk about in terms of the structures and the institutions that have been created. And rightly so, Ireland, yes, was also a colony of Britain. But yes, a lot of our institutions have been formed from that. And there's this quote that I heard that the oppressed often mirrored the actions of their oppressors. And that's why we have in many previous colonial countries often go into political systems with dictators. Like it's such an immediate, like a mirror effect. It's like you've been oppressed, and then automatically when your oppressors leave, the new people in power automatically then become oppressors to their own people. And that is something that as in Ireland, we definitely have to sit up and say, okay, the foundation has been laid by prior colony. So there definitely is issues here. How can we fix them? And we know in the UK they're working on their issues. So we're delighted to have that those issues being taught here now in Ireland, and hopefully we'll be able to have a celebratory conversation about Black Irishness, more of that in the future. So yeah, I do have a question here from Neve McGowan, and I know that I was going to throw each question to anyone, but anyone can actually answer this question if you'd like to. So the question is, how might institutions, societies, and other groups show their inclusivity for the Black Irish community, and not just as tokenism? Who wants to go here? Just put your finger up so I can see. Who wants to go first? Okay, Aghogho, please.
I think that's a great question. One way that I believe, or not just one way to be honest, but how I kind of would tackle that question is when you think of tokenism, usually tokenism occurs as a response to something. So, for example, there is a protest that happens, somebody dies, and there's a shooting, there's this, there's that. And as a result, people respond by saying, okay, let's put Black people to the spotlight. That's what really defines tokenism. Whereas inclusivity doesn't require something to happen prior to that inclusion. And that's where I think the difference is between those two things. Like Jay said really, really well, that over the past year, we've seen a lot of Black people being invited to places where they've never really stepped foot in, but they only speak about racism or they only speak about their problems. And the thing is, these people have applied to those same buildings, those same institutions, those same workplaces, but they were never invited until it seemed, okay, now let's highlight their voices. Now let's amplify what they're saying. And I think that's where the issue is when we think that it's only important to amplify the voices of people once they are like loudly hurt, rather than, okay, let's just see them as human beings who may have talents and qualifications, aspirations, and let's just look at them as that. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, instead of just saying, okay, people will look at us badly if we don't represent these people, just look at them as people who have the same type of qualities you have, the same type of qualifications you have, the same education you have, and act accordingly. That's how I see it. I think when it comes to inclusivity, it ties down as well to integration in a sense. And when I talk about integration, I don't mean integration in its warped sense as it has been almost cultivated to be now. Integration, the word itself, in its original form, implies two things coming together and almost amalgamating. But what society has done, particularly when it comes to Black Irishness or any other sort of multicultural society, is it turns into assimilation. It says, okay, you guys, you have come into our place, become like us, but we're going to call it integration so we don't look bad. That's what we see happening. And that's something that needs to stop. Because if we're talking about integration, it should be two cultures coming together, learning from each other, gaining from each other. And that's how progress happens. But the issue starts when people say, no, if you come here, then you have to be completely like us. And if you're not like us, we're going to exclude you completely. And that's why we see a lack of inclusivity in the workplace and in educational spaces and in a lot of different environments, because people aren't looking for that integration. They're just looking for people who look like them but have a different skin, if you understand what I mean. You sound like me, you talk like me, you write like me, everything looks like me, your skin color is just different. Right, rather than embracing somebody for who they are, the roots they have, the origin they have, and saying, okay, I recognize you have all of these great traits, and though they may be different to mine, I can benefit from it. My company can benefit from it. You know, it's just a way of looking at things in a more broad sense, rather than saying, let's just trust what we've always known. We've always seen, for example, white Irish people in these spaces, and therefore let's continue to push them in these ways. And that's why I think I also like what Bashir said. Sorry, if you want to say something.
Thanks, Aghogho. I think that sorry to cut you off there, but I think you've answered the question fantastically. So the difference between tokenism and actual inclusivity is tokenism happens as a result of hurt or as a result of this big issue, whereas inclusivity is something that has been done and is part of the culture, is foresight. You've been doing this already. You're not doing it as a result. You're not doing this because you don't want to be looked at as called a certain way. So just encapsulating that in our culture as institutions, where we go looking for difference. We don't just only accept those that have the loudest voice in terms of oppression in the communities. So thank you so much for answering that question, Aghogho. I have another question, and if I can throw this to either of you, Bashir or JYellowL. So the question is the experience of young Black and Irish different for men than it is for women? Who would like to answer that?
I can answer that.
Thanks. Go
In
ahead.
part, I think if the experience of men and women is different in general in wider society, then naturally it'll be different in the Black and Irish experience. You know what I'm saying? I think Black women historically have been probably the most oppressed group of people. Um, certainly, certainly most oppressed minority group from my view, and my experiences, down to all sorts of, not only just from, white people or white Irish people, but also within our own community as well. So I think having to face the oppression from both sides, and it's very, very annoying for me to see, as well as I'm sure it is to experience, much
Yeah.
worse. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think that's a good question, but I
Yeah.
think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the intersectionality that Kimberly Crenshaw talks about comes to play here. Kimberly Crenshaw is a fantastic academic, and she talks about critical race theory and intersectionality, the ideology that, as a woman in society, like JYellowL rightly said, women are already oppressed in society. We're already fighting for equalities, and then you have blackness added to it. So that's the double oppression sometimes. And then if you're a female Black Muslim, that's triple barriers that could potentially come out. So yeah, of course it is different. It is absolutely different to answer that question. And yeah, we're fighting for it, and we have fantastic men like JLOL who are going to speak out when they see those issues compounding. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So the last question I will direct to Bashir here. So it says, there are so many more children of color in our communities now, which means we're all more likely to spend time caring for these children in schools or childcare clubs, neighborhoods, etc. What can a white Irish person in those positions do differently or keep doing to best support and empower these children? So, and this is from Jinx Free one. Sorry, I butchered that name. So yes, Bashir, and you're actually a father, so this is probably something that you'll be able to answer well.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And again, I'm not going to talk as if I have the answer, but I'll do my best. Yeah, and it goes back to what Gogo was saying about education. In first educating the self and being prepared for difference emotionally and psychologically, mentally prepared for that. And then in terms of your employer providing you that preparation in terms of diversity and inclusion training, intercultural training is so important as well. But I'll give you one personal experience. So my daughter started crash 2 years ago. So first year was great. But anyways, we wanted to change the crash so it'll be closer to home. And the crash I applied for, I saw a black lady. It was a black childminder. And to me, that was my first time experiencing that. It was grand. It was no issue. But the difference when my daughter comes home is just amazing, in the sense that her hair comes back home done. Her mom's at work. I do the morning drop off. I'm trying to fix my hair. I even got my hair done so I could, kind of relate to her when she's doing hers. So, those are the type of struggles I go through. And then when I drop her off at the crash and she sees herself being represented, and that's all it is. It's just it changes. Her mood changes because she sees herself being represented. Because she sees she's the only child in an all white crash, for example, but she sees an adult that looks like her. She says sometimes she even calls her mommy. I'm like, no, that's not your mommy. But even the fact that she does that is because she's the only one she sees. Now, of course, that's beyond our control. That really is an institutional problem. The way to address that is, again, representation in the way Aghogho and JL have already explained. But in terms of what we can do personally, there's not much other than educating ourselves and being mindful. So, for example, for women, so I can talk on behalf of my own daughter, Emma De Beer's book, Don't Touch My Hair, is a great starter in terms of understanding African women's hair, for example, because that's something I had. Obviously, I grew up in it, but in terms of its importance and in terms of the intersectionality we just talked about there, I needed to understand it for myself. And that's the education you have to do if you really want to better society. Because remember, change starts from within. So while we can, say this is where what we have to do to change the policies, curriculum reform, intercultural training, but really, it just all you can do is change yourself, because you're not going to be able to change society. All you can do is reflect on your own actions and either continue in the way if you think what you're doing is right, or change, because that's all you can do. And so just being mindful of that there will be intercultural differences. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make, is that we like to think of equality as sameness, but really we should be looking at it as equity. Because equality does not always mean we would like everything to be the same. And sameness works in a homogeneous society where everybody looks the same type of identity, same traditions. But in a diverse society, that doesn't work as well, because you are going to be neglecting a group. And so the more we start seeing visual representations of ethnic minority and diversity in the media, not just Black minority, mind you, I mean any ethnic diversity, what that shows us is a sense of safety. That, look, this is an ethnic minority person on screen. If this person can make it, well, then so can I. And so really, it just goes back to education, educating the self and self-reflection.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bashir. And yes, just to highlight the main point from that is, like, this question, this person's asking, what can you do? And that's what he said, educate yourself. I'm a parent, and before I had children, you're very nervous. So you started reading a bunch of parenting books, and, the podcast, joined all these mom websites to get tips. So similarly, if you have children, you're raising children who are white Irish or mixed race Irish, it's important to inform your mixed race Irish children about their heritage, their Blackness, and the potential intersectional issues that they may face. And that's, again, very important. And even for the white Irish kids as well, just encouraging about the difference. And just adding that, my daughter watches CBBS, and they're so fantastic in representation in terms of race, gender, and different abilities. And my daughter would ask me, "Oh, mommy, why is that person on a chair? That's a child in a wheelchair." And I'll explain it to her and say, "So that some people have to use that because some people can't walk, and that's okay." So as a white Irish parent, I would also encourage you, don't ignore the idea of race, because children see color. Like, they can see brown, yellow, red, white, purple. So they know that their friend is different. So just say, yes, that's it. People look different, and make sure that the child understands that that's okay. And yeah, that's, again, educating yourself if you need to go deeper into that. And thank you so much for that fantastic answer, Bashir. So one last question for all of the panelists, very, very quickly. And after this, then I will do my outro. So the last question, if you can summarize it, do it in 1 minute, each of you. So first, I will go to Aghogho. What do you love about being young, Black, and Irish?
Okay, that's a great question. Just to quickly answer, I love that we get to create our own identity. I think this is the first generation of Black Irish. As Bashir said, it's only in the past 10 years or so that we're actually seeing this term. So I love that we get to combine what we know from, for example, our parents who may be from Africa or be from other places, and also from the Irish culture. Because I wouldn't say about myself personally, I wouldn't say I'm completely connected to my Nigerian culture. And I also say I'm not completely connected to Irish. I'm kind of a weird mix in between. So I like the fact that I get to choose my own identity, the music I listen to, the type of conversations I have, the type of places I like to go to, the humor I have. Yeah, that's my favorite thing about being young, Black, and Irish.
Awesome. And JYellowL, what's your favorite thing about being young, Black, and Irish?
My favorite, well, I like that now it's a thing and a term that people can refer to and identify with, because I feel like before I would have to have felt like I needed to fit in to what it means to be Irish, whether that be the way I speak, the way I carry myself, humor, banter, etc. But now I can be every bit of my African, Caribbean, Irish self in one, and it'll just be that, and that's what I like about it. Being able to go home to Nigeria for 2 months, come back here and live my life and just have this seamless connection between my two cultural backgrounds.
That's wonderful, wonderful. And yourself, Bashir, what do you love about being young, Black, and Irish? Are you
Yeah,
young, Bashir? Are you young though?
that's complicated, you know? I feel old, but I'm young. It's just it's really weird. Yeah,
I'm kidding.
it's
The
a
shirt.
profession. It's the profession I'm in. You know, it's kind of weird. But yeah, I think it's being able to relate. I suppose growing up, I was often, the only black or the first black. And that was quite an isolate. It was a good thing as well because, it was a learning opportunity for me. And often, I would be celebrated because it's new, it's fresh, it's different. But obviously that came with a lot of, a lot of isolation, a lot of self-reflection, often on your own in your own community. And so there was that kind of as Aghogho explained in terms of, you're not fully Nigerian, you're not fully Irish, you're kind of somewhere in the middle. But that's great because that's what we're calling Black Irish, that in itself is an identity. And I really kind of love that. But I love it even more when I travel abroad. And because of the lockdown restrictions, I kind of really miss that. It's when I'm abroad that I really appreciate being Black and Irish because, as soon as I say I'm from Ireland, all of a sudden I have loads of friends. And I travel alone to conferences a lot. So, I always have Irish friends all over no matter where I go. And it's great. And I think that's, one thing I love about being Black and Irish. Awesome.
Yeah, everyone loves the Irish. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Those are fantastic responses. I think I'll answer as well. What do I love about being Black Irish? I love the fact that I can stay in Ireland and have the fantastic quality of life and the fantastic education, the resources, and the peace that I have here. And also, like JYellowL said, I can then go to Nigeria for 2 months, enjoy the weather, to enjoy some sun, and drink tea in Nigeria because I'm so Irish. Even though it's just unbelievable the habit because we drink tea so much, like in Nigeria in the heat, and I'm like, oh, I'm craving tea, man. I need some tea. I need a cuppa. So like that's something that I think I love that again. That's having those dual identity. That dual identity is beautiful. So yeah, I hope this has been a beneficial conversation. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. I hope people have learned from it. I hope that going forward we have more conversations in line with celebrating this, new Black Irish identity. And I will again just so thank you to everyone that listened. Thank you so much to UCD. We're all alumni of UCD. I was in UCD years ago, so thank you so much for hosting us here. Thank you for having this conversation, bringing this platform here. And I do want to just highlight that, we're talking about Black Irishness and the importance of accepting that identity. But, we do have an ethnic minority group in Ireland that are here. They've been here before. It's like Bashir said, since history has been documented, we have the Irish travelers who are also facing the oppression of racism that is in this country. And the call to action for all of us as we look to be anti-racist, it's not just for people of color that we should look to be anti-racist, but also that ethnic minority group, on all minority groups in Ireland, we ought to, because it benefits all of us when we accept and we embrace all these cultures. And we ought to do better. And because we've been given this platform as Black Irish people, so I think it's important to just shine a light to our fellow minority group in Ireland, which is the Irish Travelers, and say we're also fighting for you, and we do hope that this racism that we're experiencing does come to an end. And so thank you so much, everyone. And if any content here if any of the content has affected anyone, I believe the post has been out there, the Black Therapist Ireland for Mental Support. And also, if you want to get more context in terms of Black Irishness, the Black and Irish Instagram page is really good in terms of documenting our experiences. I didn't want anyone to talk about their traumas. It's there. But it's just, again, it's there. It's our celebration, and also the experiences is present there. And also, if you want, we talked about educating ourselves. So sponet.ie is a great place for you to educate yourself on racism. And also, if you have been affected by racism, or if you do see racist incidents, or ireport.ie is also a fantastic place to resource again to report that as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation. And we're going to be exiting with a live performance of Home, which is JYellowL's song from the RTE Choice Music Prize Album of the Year nominee debut album. And credits go to Southpaw Pictures. But thank you all so much for joining us, as I said, and I really do hope you've enjoyed this conversation on being young, Black, and Irish plus Bashir. I'm kidding. But yeah. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm kidding, Bashir, we're the same age. I'm old too.
It's fine. Thanks, everybody.
Yes. It's important to appreciate those you love, man. And I feel like every time I perform this song, it becomes more and more relevant. Look, have you ever felt love that is overwhelming? Have you ever gone to a place and you know you're welcome? That's home. Look, that's home. Look, home is where the heart is. Home is where the love is. Home is on the carpet eating nuggets with your cousins. Nah, home is with your brothers. Home is with your sisters. Home is with your mother where you cover her with kisses. Nah, home is with your father. Home is with your missus. Home is when the food on the dish is sweet and delicious. Speaking of dishes, earning your keepers with sweeping the kitchens. Deep in decisions to keep the peace and peace in the visions of growth. Of togetherness, love that never lets low. Coming and never draw closer, running on parallel roads. Or so the fairy tale goes. Pose when the carousel slows. Those that never tell told. Love will forever melt souls. Those I'll never let go. So in my element, when I meant like I never left, yo. What if I never met bro? Remember telling that veteran if he ever went pro. When we were ready to get revenge when the parent went pro. Yeah, that's the place we love, but where's the safety heart? Cause sometimes you know it really gets like WrestleMania. Although gripping intellect is what the wrestles mainly are. Then we give an indirect response when the parents ask. Maybe y'all, maybe God, me an alien. But my Brady Bunch made me calm, made me radiant. Made me strong, made me calm, made me stray beyond. All the places gone on the run, but I made it home. Have you ever felt love that is overwhelming? Have you ever gone to a place and you know you're welcome, that's home? Ever talk back and hold your helmet? Cause you know if they fall back, there's no one helping, that's home. Ever felt love that is overwhelming? Have you ever gone to a place and you know you're welcome, that's home? Ever talk back and hold your helmet? Cause you know if they fall back, there's no one helping. Citizens in their own homes, divided, we can idle. Planet Earth, we are homegrown, so how can we be rivals? Not everything the government tells us will be reliable, because they pick the fight, so tell me how can we be liable? Yeah, we're neighbors, but not quite like when you read the Bible. Propaganda says it's either be decide or be disciple. We don't decide, but time will come and repeat the cycle. Well, in truth, we don't decide to freedom fight or seek revival, cause people had to seek asylum with the reek of violence, and you're weeping. So you're weak in circumstances, redefine them. No chance at reconciling the freedom from freedom fighting. But how do you expect illiterates to read the writing? Left families devastated, rapidly separated. They happily decorated the fact that they detonated bombs on the hour and it doesn't seem to slow up. You go to those kids and tell them they won't live to grow up. See, pure-hearted, but a few of us ain't. Divided us and they gave us numerous humorous names. And we're forced into acceptance, but who did you elect since? Ones with fewer votes are busy winning the elections. Father, what is it? Please, Father, forgive him. It's his passion, opinion, even in fashion of sinning. Wait, what is passion? What is it? It's all passion, opinion. It's all passion, forgiving, even in fashion of sinning. Look, cause in history there's always been entrapments, but I thought history was meant to be in the past tense. I thought we had to learn from other people's actions. The difference is related to the axis and accents. False identity, it fuels all the hate you're giving. Politics is the explanation, your nature isn't. Forget a passport, I'm way too woke for patriotism. I only have my home, and that's my main origin. Have you ever felt love that is overwhelming? Have you ever gone to a place and you know you're welcome, that's home? Ever talk back and hold your helmet? Cause you know if they fall back, there's no one helping, that's home. Ever felt love that is overwhelming? Have you ever gone to a place and you know you're welcome, that's home? Ever talk back and hold your helmet? Cause you know if they fall back, there's no one helping, that's home. 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 A home without the love is just a house, and we only love even in unequal amounts. You're hearing my home in me when I speak with my mouth. Yeah, this is what my people about. Let's take it home. A home without the love is just a house, and we only love even in unequal amounts. You're hearing my home in me when I speak with my mouth. Yeah, this is what my people about. Let's take it home.